Hello everybody and welcome back to this tutorial, and this will be our last coding example in this section. Now what we are going to do right here is we are going to perform or actually code a program that will find the largest out of three numbers. So we will prompt the user to specify three numbers. Then what we are going to do is we're basically going to check out which one of those three numbers is the largest. Now this is a rather easy program to code, so we're going to do it right now. And right after we finish that, we're going to go into the next section where we're going to start a new chapter where we actually introduce ourselves to the lists, tuples, dictionaries, and so on and so on. So first of all, let us start off with this program. So open up your idle and open up your new file, which we are going to call the largest out of three. So let us go right here, go to the desktop, Python programs, let's call it largest out of three.py. Basically these names, you can call them anything you want, you don't really have to call them as I do, or you can, however you want. And right now, let us start off by specifying what our program will do. So Python program, find the largest out of three numbers. Okay, so now that we specified what our program will do, let us see how we are going to do this. So first of all, we will prompt the user for the first number. Once they specify the first number, we will check whether that number is an actual X, which will specify that they want to actually exit the program, as in our previous tutorials. If it is not X, then we will proceed to actually prompting the user to specify the second and the third number. After they specify the second and the third number, we're simply just going to perform some if-else statements that are going to check which one of those numbers is the largest. Once we actually figure out what the largest number is, we're going to print to the screen the largest given number of the three is this one. Now we will also take note of a case where they actually specify the equal numbers. So we actually want to print in that case that all three numbers are equal. So let us see how we can actually implement all of that. So first of all, we're going to use the print statement to let the user know that they can exit the program with the X. So enter X to exit the program. And then we're going to print the user to enter the three numbers. Enter three numbers. And then we input the first number. So number 1 will be equal to the input. Of course, let us make sure that we actually use the integer value so we don't actually get an error. So input. And there we will specify enter the first number. What we're going to do before actually specifying the, let me just perform two dots right here. So what we're going to do before actually prompting the user for the next two numbers is we are going to, as I said, check whether this first number is an X. If number 1 equals to X, we're going to simply just exit the program. In any other case, that means that they actually specified the number, but let me just check right here. Because we are using the number 1 to be equal to X, we cannot really perform the integer right here. It has to be a string. Or basically, let me just double check everything. Yeah, let us do it like this. So first of all, we will not convert it to integer yet. We will simply just leave it to be a string, whether it is an X or a number. Then we will perform a check, and if it is not an X, right now, we can actually convert it to integers. So first of all, we're going to type number 1 equals integer from number 1, and the number 2 will be equal to integer from the input, because the number 2 is something that they didn't specify yet, so they have to actually specify it first. Okay, enter the second number. And the number 3 will be the same, so integer, input, and then enter the third number and the last one. So enter the third number. Okay, so now that we actually got all three numbers that we need, we're going to take an approach where we actually select randomly one of those numbers to be equal to the largest. Now, what I mean to be equal to the largest, we will just simply create a largest variable right here, and we will say that the number 1 is an actual largest variable. Now, it doesn't have to be, but we will just assume that it is. Then we will perform the check. So if largest is smaller than number 1, or pardon me, than number 2, what we're going to do is simply we're going to set the largest variable to be equal to number 2. Because if we actually set the number 1 to be equal to largest, and then we notice that the largest is now smaller than the number 2, that means that the number 1 is also smaller than the number 2. Therefore, we can set the largest to be equal now to the number 2. Okay? But before actually set it to be equal to number 2, we also need to perform a check. So we're going to do a nested if statement. So basically an if statement inside the if statement. So if number 2 is bigger than number 3, then we are going to perform this, as I said. So tab it right here. Take a few seconds to actually figure out what this does. But until then, let me just code an else statement. So basically, what we did right here, as I said, if number 1 is smaller than number 2, and if number 2 is bigger than number 3, then the largest will be equal to number 2, because the number 2 is bigger than number 3, and also it is bigger than the largest, which is equal to number 1. If this statement is fulfilled, but this statement isn't fulfilled, that means that the number 3 is actually bigger than the number 2, then we are going to set the largest to be equal to number 3. Simple as that. Okay. Then right here, we can just code else if largest, which is still number 1, is smaller than the actual number 3. Okay. Oops, not number 3, but num3. And then we're going to perform a check. So else if number 1 is smaller than number 3, then we're going to perform if num3 is bigger than number 2. This is once again an if statement inside an else if statement. If this is fulfilled, that means that the largest number is going to be number 3. So we are going to just set the largest to be equal to number 3, or num3, however you want to call it. In other case, so else, that means that the actual number 2 is larger, therefore the largest is going to be equal to num2. In any other case, outside of these cases, this means that none of this is actually fulfilled, therefore the actual largest number is assumed correctly in this statement, so we can just set the largest number is going to be equal to number 1, even though it already is, but it doesn't really matter. Let's just reset it right here. And that means that the largest number is number 1. Okay, so now that we actually got everything out of the way, we figure out that the largest number is number 1, or number 2, or number 3, doesn't even matter. Now we need to check whether the actual number 1 and number 2 and number 3 are equal. So in order to do that, we can just type here if num1 equals to num2, and also if num1 equals to num3, we want to print all the numbers are equal. But we can also do it in a different method, so we can use a counter, or basically any variable, which we will set at the beginning of the program. So let's go right here. We can set the count to be equal to 1. And if these two statements right here are fulfilled, that means that then we will set the count to be equal to 0. And then right here, we're going to perform a check if count equals to 0. Okay, so I will explain it once again. Just let me code this right here. If it is equal to 0, we will print all three numbers are equal to each other. Okay, so let us go through this once again. Basically what we did, we set a global variable count to be equal to 1 right here. Then we parse all of this program right here. Then we come to this part right here. So if number 1 is equal to number 2 and number 1 is equal to number 3, now you didn't have to do it through a nested sentence, to a nested if statement right here. We can also do it like this. Let me just go right here. And num1 equals to num3. You can do it as like this if you want to. Okay, then we will set the count to be equal to 0. And then afterwards we will check if count equals to 0, we'll print all three numbers are equal to each other. Else, if count is not equal to 0, that means that this is not correct, therefore the numbers are not equal to each other. Therefore we are going through this code, which means basically we are going to print largest of the given numbers is, and then we will concat the actual largest number, which is going to be stored in the largest variable, as we can see by the code right here. Okay, so if I'm not mistaken, everything right here should be good. Let us save the actual file and let us run it right here. As we can see, enter X to exit the program, enter three numbers. Let's go 3, 5, and 7. Okay, so let us see what the problem is. Okay, so right here, yeah, we forgot to actually concat a string from the largest because you can't really print an integer concated to a string. So let us save once again, print it, run it, pardon me. Let's use the same numbers, 3, 5, 7, and it will say the largest or the largest of the given numbers is 7. Let's try to specify all same numbers, so 3, 3, 3, and it says all three numbers are equal to each other. If we specify X at the number 1, your program is still running. Do you want to kill it? Okay, we exit the program. So simple as that. Let me just go right here, run the module, check one more time, 10, 15, 3. The largest number is 15. Okay, so it works really well. Right now, what we actually want to do is let us simply code a function that will perform some part of this code. So we can actually go copy this part right here, I believe. Yeah, we can actually try with this part right here. Or we can simply just go right here. Let me just check everything. What else? What are we going to add to the function? Yeah, let's add this part right here. We will copy it, then we will delete this. Just delete it faster like this. And then right here, we will call a function that will be called, for example, check_for largest. It will take an input of num1, num2, and num3. Okay, and we will code that function right here. So def check_for largest, which takes an input of num1, num2, num3. And right here, let us paste the actual code of the function itself. Whoops, count. Let's tap everything one time, so it belongs to the actual function. Okay, everything belongs to the actual function right now. Now let me just check everything. First of all, let me make a space right here. There is something that we actually probably need to return from this function. What is this? Count equals 1. Yeah, count equals 1 shouldn't really be in this function. Let us remove it. Let us paste it right here. Or count equals 1, we can just type it. So count equals 1. Not really sure how that ended up in our actual function, but doesn't even matter. What we need to return from here is we need to return largest at the end of the function. Okay. Now we need to store it in a variable down here, so we are going to do it like this. Either we can create a global variable largest, or we can actually Let us try a different way. So let us try with the global variable largest. Global largest. Let us save it. Let's not return it. If we specify the global variable, we don't really need to return it. We have it already, so we can print it right here. And let us run the program once again. Run module 3, 5, 7. The largest number is 7. Okay, so it does work. Let us try one more time. 10, 15, 20. The largest number is 20. Let us try with actually specifying 3 same numbers. So 4, 4, 4. They are all equal to each other, so our program works. We successfully implemented a function that will check for the largest number given 3 inputted numbers, and therefore our program is finished and we can continue to the next section. So hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and we will continue in the next section where we'll start off by learning what lists are in Python. Hope I see you there, and take care. Bye.